attorney, a mortgage broker, and a real estate agent walk into a bar. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children 18 plus. You are tuned into the Loan Officer Podcast with me, Dustin Owen, and today my special guest, by way of University of Miami Law School, by way of University of Arizona undergrad, Orlando resident, Florida bar certified attorney, Joe Sternberg. Joe, thank you for being a guest on the Loan Officer Podcast.
Thank you, Dustin.
It's a pleasure to have you in here. You are our first attorney. Yeah,
I feel honored for that.
Yes, we're a little bit scared. Any other times in my life when I've been sitting this close to an attorney, it wasn't for anything good. There's nothing positive going on. But this is going to be positive because you and I have probably wasted a solid 25 minutes of JC's time today talking about hot yoga, talking about half marathons, learning to swim, partying in South Beach. Today, I want to dive into...
Why don't we start there with the partying
in South Beach?
Yeah.
We'll come back to that because I do want the audience to get to know you the way that I have gotten to know you over the past few weeks. At the same point, I know you have the reason why we brought you on, right? Because people who tune into the show are usually renters. If they're not renters, then they're homeowners. And some of those homeowners own investment properties. And I know that a certain area that you've been litigating recently or know more about than the average bear happens to be tenant rights, landlord rights as it pertains to disputes when tenants and landlords had disputes. So if you'll allow us to, I do want to dive in deep into that. But first, before we get into partying in South Beach, why an attorney? Like at what point in your life did you say, you know what? I think I want to be an attorney. Do you come from a family of attorneys? Was it something that was pressed upon you from an early age?
Sure. Well, that's a great question because it's a very common question I get. And frankly, it's funny that this is going to be recorded because you could ask me this tomorrow, anyone can ask me. It really fluctuates because honestly, I'm not really sure, right? Like,
okay.
It wasn't you hear of like some people, when I was 5, I saw someone on TV and I just knew I wanted to be that type of person or that profession, right? When I was 5, I wanted to be an NBA basketball player. So that just wasn't going to pan out. It wasn't in the cards.
Being 5'8" hurt a little bit?
Yeah,
it didn't.
5'9".
5'9"?
Right.
Okay, because it didn't hurt Spud Webb one bit.
That's true. No, believe me, I would play 4 or 5 hours a day.
Would you?
I was very serious about it.
That was your jam.
That was my jam. Space Jam. Was my jam.
Okay, and I do know you have like a 36-inch vertical. I've heard stories of you grabbing rim. So I can only imagine what it was like throwing it back to yesteryear and watching you. I'm sure you have handles, right? You probably played point guard, good at dishing, good behind the arc.
Oh, yeah. I was a great shooter.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I loved it.
So growing up, you were going to be a NBA basketball player.
Yes. So that was the goal.
The next Steve Nash before he grew long hair.
Yeah.
Steve Nash before he grew long hair. Okay.
Well, I'm also from Tucson, Arizona, and so I grew up around the whole basketball environment.
Yeah.
Right. The
So
Arizona Wildcats with Lute Olson.
But wasn't that the Suns they had an older, heavier Charles Barkley? Didn't they have? Didn't they have Steve Nash? John Stockton.
Nash,
John Stockton was in Utah, but Steve Nash was with Phoenix, wasn't he?
Right.
Okay.
Right. Him and Stoudemire.
Yeah.
They were beasts. Yeah.
That's an Orlando kid.
Was he?
Yeah, Amari. I think that's his first name, right?
Amari Stoudemire.
Yeah,
right.
yeah. I'm pretty sure he came from Orlando, but okay. The NBA career didn't work out.
Right.
So you're in undergrad. You stayed in Arizona.
Yeah. Well, let's start back. Let's go back to growing up in Tucson, right? So in 5th grade. So this is the funny story. I had this teacher, Mr. Williams, and apparently I feel like I'm a little more refined now, but I would argue with him nonstop. So he gave me a nickname as the lawyer.
Okay.
Right? And so funny, like, I don't know, maybe 10 years later, once I was in law school or whatnot, I went back home, I ran into him. So it was really, really funny to actually tell him, like, hey, you were right that I became an attorney, but it wasn't really in the cards for me until undergrad.
Okay.
Right?
What transpired in undergrad? A DUI?
Right. No. Luckily, I haven't had the one thing I had on my record, which it wasn't even a criminal charge, was we threw a party at my college house, and my 4 roommates and I, so the 4 of us total, had to get what's called in Tucson like a red something. I'm forgetting the name of it, like a red tag, I think it is. They put it on your wall or the outside of your house, and if you have another party within a certain amount of time, then like you can get more and more fines. It's because there's crazy partying around the community. Which I had to report to the Florida bar.
So it's almost like you have to get a permit to have a party, and if you have too many parties within a certain time period, they can fine you.
No, this was the warning if someone called the cops on you because you're too loud and rowdy.
Okay.
Right? And so then you would get this tag, and it was just known. It was actually kind of like a badge of honor, I feel like, too. So we weren't too upset, but I had it under my name.
But the Florida bar made you disclose that?
You have to disclose everything.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
But you were junior, senior in undergrad, and you made the conscious decision that you want to take the LSAT, go to law school, and become an attorney.
Yes. And that started because I'm gonna go back, and this is a very personal matter for me. So when I was in high school, my sister was in a really horrific car accident, and she was on her way to college, and she's 4 years older than me, so she was just turned 19, I was 15, and she's driving from Tucson to Colorado to go to veterinarian school, and she's pulling a U-Haul trailer behind her, and on the way, it's a horrific rollover accident, and she's ejected from the car. We're not really sure because she happened to be in the back seat. She had a few dogs with her because she loved animals, which is a fascinating story as well about one of the dogs, how he survived for 5 weeks.
Wow.
In the wilderness. But she was in this horrific car accident, and she was in the ICU for a month. And so my parents went to Albuquerque because that's where it happened, and were basically by her side, trying to revive her. And I mean, she has a very severe brain injury now. And still lives. I mean, this was in 2003, right?
Yeah.
So we're talking a long time ago. And we had some family attorneys that, we spoke to rather quickly, and it was a very big case. And if you want, you can go. I'm sure maybe we can put in the notes or whatever. The LA Times did a article about it. Right?
Okay.
So that was my first experience with the law, right? So I actually.
You're 15 years old, and
yeah. So that was a major tragedy for our family, which has ramifications to today. And so I remember I was deposed in that case. I mean, it was like a 30-minute thing.
Which, by the way, for anyone who's ever sat through a deposition, they're not fun. I mean, I don't know if they teach you guys that in law school. Like, hey, look, you kind of got to be a dick and make the person feel uncomfortable on the other side. But so you had to go through that at 15.
Yeah, well, okay.
And by the way, that might have been my one experience, or it could have been that one attorney who was deposing me. But depositions in general aren't that fun to be a part of.
Yeah, and so a deposition is really just to seek information from a person, right? It's usually
so maybe I kept on saying I don't remember, I can't recall, I don't remember. Maybe that's why he got a little testy with me. Okay.
Probably. Okay. Right. Yeah, and I'm not sure what the situation was, but off camera we can talk about it if you want. But in this situation, as a 16-year-old at that time, or however old I was, it was a year or so after the accident while we were deep in litigation. Well, first of all, I was shielded from a lot of it. Like I couldn't know what was going on, and I still don't know what the settlement was, but it ultimately settled. I witnessed the packing of the trailer. Right, because it was a pull. They rented one to pull behind. My sister had like a Toyota Cruiser, whatever.
Yeah, 4Runner, whatever.
4Runner, yeah, one of those. And what was I going to say about that? So
the packing, something with the litigation.
So I had seen it, and so he asked me maybe 5 questions. Again, it was very short because he doesn't know what I knew, and I could be a witness in the case. So of course, I was deposed. And that's actually what I wrote about when I applied for law school in my personal statement, was that accident. How, I mean. You can imagine how that shapes your.
And you picked the University of Miami. Was that just because you wanted to make sure you went from one hot place to another hot place, or was it something about growing up and the University of Miami dominating the college football scene? I'm just curious why you went. I mean, it's notorious for being a smart kid school. I mean, it is a very good, academic school.
Yeah. So the story and I jump around a lot, so I apologize. But I went to study abroad as a junior in college. I was living in Spain.
Okay.
Because I really, really loved the whole Spanish culture. I wanted to study abroad. I had a cousin that had done it in the past, and I really wanted to travel and really get outside of Tucson because I was basically growing up there. I went to the university there. So while I was abroad, I came to me like, hey, I want to take this to the next level. I feel like I really conquered. I became fairly fluent in Spanish.
Okay.
I had traveled to 15 countries, and I was having a blast. But I was like,
you were there for one semester or a whole year?
I stayed for a whole year.
Good for you.
I went there initially for a semester, but I loved it so much that I convinced my parents, hey, let me stay for another semester.
Anyone tuning in that is the parent of someone who is high school age going into college, or they're freshmen, sophomores in college, or if you yourself are 18, 19, or 20, study abroad. Study abroad, study abroad, study abroad. It's like the one piece of information that I pass along. My wife did it. I did it. You did it.
Where'd you go?
I was in England and she was in Australia.
Ah.
And I only went for a semester, and I wish I went for a whole year. My wife went for like 5 months, so not quite a whole year, but a little bit longer than a semester. Mm-hmm. Her program was just a little bit unique like that. But yeah, it's just an incredible experience, and that's a rabbit hole that I'll leave there. But yeah, I don't want to interrupt. So you were doing a study abroad program. It was supposed to just be a semester. You saw the value, were enjoying yourself, extended it through the whole year. It was there that you discovered, wait a minute, I want to continue to learn how to speak Spanish, and I want to go to law school. So University of Miami fits both those categories.
Well, I didn't know where I was going to go to school, obviously.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, because you still have to apply and get in and pass the LSAT and score well on it, et cetera.
Yeah. I went home, I started my plans, right? And I became very studious because at that point I actually was, fairly average student. I was doing well. I was in the business school at U of A, which is called the Eller College of Management. And so I'd done well enough to get to those stages, but I didn't feel that challenged, right? And then my best semester was those final 2 semesters in college because I was very serious. Like I was trying to, and it was easier for me at that point because I had really expanded my mind. Learn another language, I think really unleashes.
Had you taken Spanish in high school and college?
Yeah, I did. And I had a fantastic professor that I didn't think I was that great at learning languages. It's like a lot about the whole mindset thing. And it wasn't until this first semester in college that I had a professor that only spoke Spanish. I mean, she was from a South American country. I can't recall at this point. I think it was Chile. And she was awesome, and she taught me like I did, and I excelled in that class. So that's what got me the idea of going abroad.
Would you still consider yourself fluent in the Spanish language?
I still have, I have clients that only speak Spanish, but I have a translator just because the lingo, right, the specific vocabulary, mm-hmm. It's, I don't want to make any mistakes on that. So, and my legal mind thinks so much in English, so if I need to look something up or it's important that I have someone that translates, but I can listen and I can hold a conversation in Spanish. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, that's still at 40. I'll be 42 next week, and that's still at the top of I have a top 3 bucket list items that I need to achieve. It's becoming fluent in Spanish. So I keep on telling my wife, I'm like, look, our daughter is 12 going on 13. In about 7 years, maybe we'll be in a spot that we can go and move to Costa Rica for a year, or Honduras or Ecuador, or somewhere in South America where I read. I've never been. I heard it's very pretty and it's fairly inexpensive to live. So I could fish, mm-hmm. and I could focus on becoming fluente en español. Pero necesito practicar.
Sí, es importante practicar.
Yeah. So University of Miami, you win, you get in. You obviously have a high enough GPA. You kicked ass your last year. You probably smoked the LSAT. You go down there, you graduate, you meet a ton of friends. Mm-hmm. How'd you end up in Orlando? You're in Orlando, Florida now.
Yeah, great story. And just to close the loop real quick, Miami, it was picked because for me, fantastic location, knew that it was an incredible school, and I wanted to do something at that time that was a little bit international, and I wanted to also practice my Spanish. So it really just met that criteria. That was why I ended up here. And I didn't know a soul, and I hadn't even been to Miami. I hadn't even visited. So I accepted
It's a beautiful campus, by the way. I'm assuming, I don't know that. Is the law school the same place that the undergrad school is?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so it's a beautiful campus.
Yeah. And so how do I end up in Orlando, though, to get back to your last question? So in my first semester, I just hit it off with this guy who's now my law partner. His name's Parker Landers, and he's from Orlando originally. And so we stayed in touch throughout the years and obviously talked about business all throughout law school. And then eventually, I would come up here in the summers when he was interning at the prosecutor's office. And we just decided, let's start a law firm. I mean, there's a lot of, in between the years.
Did you start? Yeah, so your undergrad's in business.
Yeah.
Okay, and then obviously law degree, take the bar exam, pass the bar. Did you start your own law firm? Because you own your own law firm now, right? You and Parker have your own law firm.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any other partners or just the two of you?
The two of us.
The two of you. What's the name of your law firm?
It's Landers Sternberg.
Very easy.
Very easy, yeah.
And then L before S, is that kind of...
Yeah.
Or did you flip a coin, or you just went, no, we're supposed to go in alphabetical order, so it's Landers and Sternberg?
I won't lie, I like my name more, and I did think it should go first, but he did as well, and we actually polled a few friends, and tried to be unbiased about it, and then I thought because it's L and before S, and we were starting here, to me it didn't matter that much.
Okay.
So
paper, rock, scissors would have been awesome. Best 5 out of 7 or 4 out of 7.
Right. Right. Well, there's Greenberg Tareg, right? So Sternberg Landers would have sounded great as well.
Okay.
I mean, at the end of the day, we could have just gone with a our name's name. I don't know.
Did you come right out of law school and jump right into your own practice?
No.
Okay.
No, yeah. So I don't. This can be a longer podcast or not, but I moved around actually a good amount in between. So
I mean, I would almost suggest that. I know nothing about running a law firm. I know a little bit about running a business and scaling businesses, but if I was consulting my 22-year-old or my 24-year-old, which I don't have yet, but I will at one point, I'd be like, yeah, you know what? Don't just go right into your own firm. Go and see, do you like prosecution? Do you like personal injury? Do you like corporate tax? Get a feel of what you like. And then do you want to climb the corporate ladder? Or do you want to have your own practice, your own firm, at which point, what are you going to specialize in?
Right. Well, I think the truest practice is that you have your own firm, right? But there's a lot of advantages to not. I would say, to be frank, we started in 2018.
Okay.
Okay. So now we're 2.5 years in, and I would say maybe 3, 4, 5 months ago, it really felt like we have enough tailwind behind, whatever the expression is, we have enough behind us. It's like the snowball going down the mountain where it really is sustaining itself at least.
Well, that's any new business is 2 years. Any new business is 2 years. Anyone I've coached or mentored, whether they were solopreneurs, meaning they were loan officers or realtors, whether they were straight up entrepreneurs who are starting their own, you name that business, whether it's a home flipping business, whether it's a food truck, the tailwind, you need 2 years. Your first year is just figuring it out. Your first year is systems and processes and people. Your second year is okay, I have systems and processes and people. Now let's see what we can get moving. It's year 3 that you sit back and say, oh, okay, I'm actually finally making money. I'm actually less stressed out. I know where my next paycheck's coming from. I would assume starting my own law firm or my own dental practice or my own medical family practice would be something similar unless I bought into a previously existing practice, at which point if I did that, I went to the bank and got a 6-figure type loan to do so. Mm-hmm. You guys experienced something very similar then, right? In terms of you're like, we started in 2018, here we are at the end of 2020, and it's about 3 months ago that we were like, okay, we're doing this.
Right, and it's not like we weren't making money. I'm not saying that. It's just as far as getting a Facebook page, your website going, do you have social media as far as Instagram, LinkedIn pages, and just the time it takes to think through those things.
Yeah, because how does
ads? There's so many questions. You don't even know what you don't know yet.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. How does an attorney find clients?
That's a great question. That's the big.
Yeah, because let me ask you this: what type of law did you practice when you worked for others?
Sure. Okay. My first position in in the legal field was at the Broward County Public Defender's Office. So I actually got to be an intern with that office, which was really opened my eyes to the criminal justice system, right? So I'll always bleed towards the defense as far as seeing the injustices in the system, and which is ironic because Parker worked in the prosecutor's office, which is the opposite. So he works for the state, and he's the one representing the people, basically, right? So if everyone knows the the People versus OJ, right?
Yep.
You think about the most, the biggest.
Yeah, someone screwed up,
Right.
and we have put them in jail based on XYZ evidence. The evidence has to now be presented in the courtroom for a jury, judge, what have you. Parker is the one saying, this is the evidence that says you're guilty. And the people that you got to work with were those that I'm assuming don't come from financial means, maybe aren't very well traveled, maybe aren't formally educated, and their only option for legal defense is what is going to be provided to them for free by way of the government, the local government.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's outside the scope of this, but there's a famous book called it's something Gideon's, which talks about when we started that process of requiring defense for defendants in criminal cases, because it wasn't always that way.
Well, I'd guess
you
it
weren't
starts.
guaranteed.
It starts with the Miranda rights, right? Because if I was read my Miranda rights, doesn't it tell me that I have the right to an attorney if I cannot afford an attorney will be provided on my behalf.
Right. That was after.
Okay.
Right? The Miranda rights that's a whole other. That's criminal defense. That's criminal procedure. That's 101 in law school. Every law student, any law students watching this would know. Like, yeah, you study that case, Miranda. I think that was actually an Arizona case. So, and it's beyond me. I'd have to go read it again.
Yeah.
Exactly what the facts were.
You took the class, you studied, you passed the test.
Yes,
you moved
exactly.
on. Exactly.
So,
No, there's only so much our brains can actually retain.
Well, that's the thing about lawyers. We're trained in looking up the law,
Yeah,
and understanding how to craft,
Yeah, it's almost like you know where to find the answer, and you actually speak that language. Because
it is a language.
I don't speak that language.
I'll tell anyone this too, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. When I started law school, I didn't even know the difference between plaintiff and defendant. I would get them mixed up.
Yeah.
I'd heard them. If I had to be quizzed on not Jeopardy or like what's the $1 million.
Oh yeah, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire?
Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? I probably would get it, but I just, in the speed of how law school was initially, I struggled because it was a foreign language. It really is.
So full disclosure, my first job interview in the mortgage industry, the job that I took that launched my career, at some point in the interview, I had to ask the interviewer, who was my first boss, now what is it exactly that I'm going to be doing when I'm hired? I didn't know.
That's a fair question, though.
Yeah, I'm like, and I.
You should know it, but.
No, yeah. I had done enough research that what I thought I was doing was a certain segment of the mortgage industry. It just wasn't the segment that particular company focused on. And then something I picked up in college, and I can't remember what course it was. It was probably one of my electives, because I always made sure I took the really cool electives, like Hitler's Third Reich, and I did one on like white collar crime. But it was once taught to me that what makes a profession is that they have their own language or jargon. Like, you're in a profession when you can speak to another person in your industry, have a conversation that a layperson can't follow. Mm-hmm. Now, my childhood best friend who lives in San Diego as a Border Patrol agent, he likes to have personal conversations with me where he drops like cop jargon. I'm like, bro, what are you doing to me? I don't know what, we bumped out a 75 and I'm like, no, what does that mean in English? You attorneys, yeah. I'm like, I try to read any type of contract. I'm like, I'll just sign it. Like, what does that mean? I don't know. Which, so now I'm going to start really wanting to pepper you with questions. So I want to close the loop on what we were what we were just chatting about, which was where you got your start and how you came about having your own firm. So in a quick 30, 45 seconds, you interned at one point in the public defender's office.
Right.
When you graduated, where'd you find yourself?
Right. So throughout law school, I interned at various different types of law firms. So I had exposure to a number of them. When I graduated, I actually didn't go right into practice in Florida. I actually moved around a little bit.
Okay.
I ended up back in Arizona, passed the Arizona bar there, so I'm licensed there now as well. While it's inactive, I started there as well with a corporate firm. And then I came back and I was working. I did a number of different jobs, right? I was starting in it's actually close to the mortgage industry. It was called Association Law Group, right?
Okay.
And that they basically, I don't know how big they were as far as how much of the pie they had, but they represented all the different associations, homeowners and condo associations, and all kinds of matters. But
and condo associations and homeowners associations
Yeah.
are in constant litigation.
they're in constant litigation because
I don't know who's in litigation more often, them or contractors. I mean, I'm gonna say contractors probably 5-1, but I never realized how much contractors were in litigation until I became buddies with a neighbor of mine who is a GC, and he's a GC for like a really large national, if not worldwide, firm. And he's like, yeah, that's just normal. Like, we sue our vendors, they sue us. I go, oh my God, so then like, do you have to go out and find new vendors? He's like, no. He goes, they hire us for the next project. We hire them for the next project. He's like, that's just how we operate. I'm like, I couldn't imagine living in a world where in order to get something done, I just have my attorney call your attorney, file some paperwork, maybe a lawsuit or two, go to mediation, and that's how we figure out who owes who what type of money. But that's how it works, at least my understanding in that industry. And then working in the mortgage banking industry, yes, HOAs and condos, they definitely like to litigate.
Yes, and so I did that for a number of months while I was actually at that point, because I moved back, I was waiting for my results for the Florida bar, and then I worked some other odd jobs. And during that, I actually started my own firm, and so I was taking a few cases here and there while I was working part time at some jobs, while I was interviewing, figuring out what I want to do, because because I had moved around a little bit, it wasn't as easy right out of law school, and so. One of those first cases was actually a security deposit dispute. So this is where it gets interesting about landlord-tenant law, right? If a landlord takes a security deposit in a lease, right? Let's say if I was a tenant, you're the landlord,
Okay.
and I'm signing the lease.
And I want first month, last month, and security deposit.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so historically, you're a landlord. You don't, as much as you can do a background search on somebody, you want to make sure if he damages the walls and all that, you can keep the security deposit. So it's very important that you get them, obviously, because you need that kind of security. There's a reason that most leases have them, right? Now, if a landlord wants to tap into that money, I mean, the legislator is very serious about holding money, right? Any kind of situation that somebody's holding money on behalf of another person, it's supposed to be in separate accounts. You're not allowed to touch it unless you follow strict guidelines. And so the Florida statute actually has rules around how a landlord can go after that money, right?
Okay.
So let's say, again, in this scenario, I'm the tenant, you're the landlord. I move out, and I go, hey, Mr. Landlord, I gave you $1,000 security deposit. I believe I left it spickety-span. I have pictures. I left it. It was fine, right? So the landlord, let's say you notice, oh man, something's broken in the house that I believe is his fault, right? And it could be, the walls are just destroyed, let's just say. And you would have, the statute says you have 15 days if you're not going to make a claim on the security deposit to just send it back to the tenant. If you are going to make a demand, though, you have 30 days. And then in those 30 days, you have to send this letter, and the letter is very specific. It says, I'm making a claim on your security deposit, and here are the reasons. And after the reasons, you have 15 days to respond in writing to this address. And then if you don't, there's other ramifications. And then ultimately, if you respond and contest, so if I respond to that letter, I say, you know what, I contest that. It would have to go to court because the landlord, you can't touch that money until I've said, okay, you take 200 of it. I disagree. Like, it's supposed to be informal. But what happens is if the landlord didn't send the letter at all, let's say a month and a half went by, so you're past the 30 days. Yeah. Which a lot of new landlords don't understand that.
Especially if you're self-managed.
If you're self-managed, you're just getting into business. You need to know that statute, that it's 8351.
And that's for here in the state of Florida.
In Florida, to be clear.
But if you're not in Florida, which I'd probably say about 25% of our listeners are in Florida, the other 75% are spread out. I mean, California to Georgia, everywhere in between. I'm assuming it's a good chance your state also has very specific statutes that you need to follow. And you're talking about you had a client hire you because they were disputing, were they the tenant or they were the landlord?
They were the tenant.
They're the tenant.
Yeah.
So their landlord was like, I'm keeping your money. And they're like, why? Because I've left this house better than I found it. At which point, it must have been a large enough sum of money, or is a good friend of yours that you were like, you know what, I'll do this case pro bono because it'd be fun for me.
Well, let me answer that, because there's a lot of presumptions in your statement. The thing.
Look at that. That is straight up attorney talk. There's a lot of presumptions in your statement, Mr. Owen. No, I like it.
The important thing to keep in mind is, yeah, that's a great question. What lawyer would want to take that type of case?
Yeah.
Okay. So imagine that you're.
I'm going to spend $500 to recover $1,000.
Exactly. So if you were writing the laws, what do you think you would do if that was a situation?
I would just
to protect tenants.
Right.
Imagine you were writing the legislator, right?
Okay, well then I have that law written where it's the money plus attorney's fees at a minimum, if not money, attorney's fees, and possibly opportunity cost.
Exactly. Right. Not the opportunity cost, but there's a provision for attorney's fees in the Landlord-Tenant Act. Okay. And
so that's good to know for both landlords, especially for landlords. Like, look. Landlords, if you're listening, if you made it this far into the podcast, into this episode, is it really worth that $1,000? Because if they damaged the home, then yeah. If they didn't, and you're just trying to find a way to pad your pockets, it could cost you more than that $1,000.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Right. And I've successfully litigated cases that were, maybe 500 or more, a little bit more, where the landlord didn't send a letter. And that was that first case. It was more than, it was around 2,000, I believe. Yep. And they didn't send the letter at all. So I filed the suit, and I believe I got a default. The landlord didn't even show. Right.
Okay.
And because I had a few of them, they actually, this is the funny thing about law, and like you had asked earlier, I don't know if it was during this or before, of like, how do lawyers find clients, right? Well, a lot of it's word of mouth, right? And falling into the area. Like I fell into this area, right? And so this particular defendant didn't respond. We got the default judgment plus my attorney's fees. So, a $2,000 claim became close to six figures for them. And then when we went to do so after you get a judgment, hey, that's nice. You have a piece of paper.
Yeah.
You have to go and try to collect on it, right? And so the steps to do that are, I can send you, let's say you were that landlord again, and I won this, I got a default, or I went to trial and I won, whatever it is, but I have a judgment. If I want to go and get the money for that judgment, I need to know your bank account information. I need to know, do you have assets to go seize it? I mean, there's all these steps you can take after the case is won.
To collect your money, because all a judgment is that there's a judge stated you owe this money.
Right. And so in our few years now, I have a few cases where we've won, and I tell the clients, look, it's very difficult to collect, because it is. So, but back to the landlord-tenant situation where, and this one specifically, we were able to then, once you get a judgment, you can record it in the public record. And once you record in the public record, it's good for 20 years. And so it accumulates interest at whatever the statutory rate is at that time. And so a year or so went by, and I haven't been paid.
Yeah.
My client's out is $2,000 as well. And then the landlord wants to sell the property. Well, that's nice. You're a mortgage broker. You understand the process. You have to go through looking at title. Well, hey, there's a claim. So, 3 days before closing, will you accept this? And they're negotiating about the judgment. I say, I will accept the full amount. Thank you. Okay, my client's been out of $2,000 for a year and a half now, or three, whatever it was. It was many, many months. And so it's a costly mistake that any landlord really, they need to be wise about. The other thing to keep in mind is, if it's just wear and tear, if it's if they've been in your house for 3 years, right, and they're renting, things are going to break down. The walls are going to lose a little bit of their color. Like, you cannot charge for those things. That's called wear and tear. Now, if it's they do major damage, they break a door, they rip up a knob, like things that obviously just don't happen, but except for, some kind of deliberate act of the tenant, then you can go after them, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Yeah, wear and tear. Here's a great example. When I look at I live in a 2-story house, so the kids go upstairs. Well, kids, if you ever watched kids do anything, their hands must be touching every wall, every appliance, and every window you have.
Right.
Well, my stairs have 2 lines because we lived in the house for 9 years, where the kids run their hands going up the stairs. Oh yeah, it looks like almost like black. I'm sure all the grease and dirt and grime kids have on their hands. And you're saying a landlord like, oh, you damaged my wall because I see black streaks in this hallway. We're like, no, that's normal wear and tear. One coat of paint that's corrected. You can't keep my security deposit because I lived in the home and it had natural wear and tear.
Right, and this is where a crafty attorney on whichever side whatever side I'm on this case, I could argue either way.
Okay,
right? I would say that's a close call
because your 5th grade teacher said that. I mean, you're going to argue.
Mr. Williams said I would argue it.
Yeah.
Yes. So but I mean, you have to argue it, right? That's why I'm in the case. So you have to make those arguments, and I depend on, again, I'd want to actually see the pictures and all that. And then ultimately, if it couldn't be agreed upon between the parties, then the judge would have to decide on a situation like that. Would I take a case like that where it really each one's very fact specific, because what I've seen is very egregious a few times with landlords is, let's say they have a $1,000 security deposit.
Yep.
Okay.
Is $1,000 what's normal, or is 1 month?
It's usually
normal?
1 month,
Okay.
but I'm using even numbers just to keep it safe.
Okay.
Keep it simple for this podcast. Let's say that, so it's $1,000 and the landlord writes that letter. It's within the 30 days and it says, Mr. Tenant or Mr. and Mrs. Tenant or tenants, I believe that you have $7,000 in damages. So I want the $1,000 of yours, plus I want more. I want additional funds.
Oh, wow. And
so it could be $2,000, it could be $3,000, whatever it is. You're a tenant. You don't know, like you said, the language of the law, right? You see that. You might call up a law office, but not that many lawyers do this type of practice. And so they might say, oh, I don't know, that's not our area, yada, yada, or they go seek legal help or they research it online. They don't know what to do. The issue is that landlord didn't, in good faith, put that $7,000 in this scenario. They put that because they really just want the $1,000, but they want to scare you. They're going to go after the other $6,000 or whatever the amount is. And so I've had clients come to me with that, and I say, and in one situation, I said, usually I would just send a response and a demand letter, but we're going to take the initiative. You have to be aggressive. Let's just file against them. And then we did, and then ultimately we were able to resolve it because and after talking to them, it was very clear that they just had, lies, clear lies of like this thing about a piece of furniture. She's like, I didn't have that. And you have to, I believe my client, but it's at least from what she had shown me in the evidence, it seemed egregious.
What are some of the top 2 or 3 mistakes you see landlords make? And then I'm gonna flip it on you and say, what are the top 2 or 3 mistakes tenants make? Because we're getting ready to go into the end of one year, beginning of another. So people typically either buy and move in December, or they wait to do it in the summer months. That's what we see happen. So we're getting ready to enter into the second busiest time to buy and sell property, which is December, or rent to move. People want to move during the holidays. They have vacation time. Kids have a break from school. If you're going to move a kid from one school system to the other, it's best to do so in between semesters. So we find December's a busy month. And then same thing goes for like the May, June, July time period. Those are busy months because it's summer months. So if people are at a point where they're getting ready to turn over their lease, or they're getting ready to go lease a new place themselves, let's start with the landlords. What are like the top 2 or 3, I call them mistakes, you may have a different word for it, but just like gotchas or things to look out for when you are a landlord?
And that's a great question. I haven't been asked that specifically before. I would say number 1 is clearly the security deposit dispute. If someone's moving out, you just need to send that letter. Okay, so educate yourself.
Only if I'm anticipating keeping their security deposit.
Yes, exactly.
So that
if you're
means,
not just sending the money, obviously.
Yeah. So yeah. I need to go walk the property ASAP, because is it the minute they move out, the 30-day clock starts?
Yes, it starts.
The day the lease expires, or the day they move out.
That's a great question. I believe it's the date that they vacate. Right?
Okay.
So let's say they move the 30th. But I think you would start the day after the lease ends, because usually that's when you're
so
doing the official walkout.
So I want to go do my walkthrough.
So here's back to, again, like you said, knowing the law and all that. I've done this dozens of times, but I still look at the statute and use a counter and look at the calendar, because it can get tricky, right? Especially, do you count a holiday? What if it ends on a Sunday? There's all these rules about, right? Like, hey, let's say the 30th day is a Saturday. Well, what happens? It goes to that next Monday, unless that Monday's a holiday. If that Monday's, it's MLK Day, then it's that Tuesday.
Oh, wow.
Right. So there's all these rules, right? So
which benefits the landlord, not the tenant.
Right.
If I'm a tenant and I get through Friday, I'm like, yes. No, they still have until Monday or Tuesday to actually get me that letter. And then here we are coming off of the 2020 election. Does it count from when it was postmarked, or does it count from when it was received?
It's when it's postmarked.
Postmarked.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. But how about this? Here's my biggest takeaway right now. Nothing is easy. Take a deep breath, take a step back, and make a phone call if you have to. Just make sure that you're looking out for your best interests as it pertains to the law. Mm-hmm. And I was even thinking, like, if you were a landlord, if you own 2 rental properties, mm-hmm. and for whatever reason you didn't listen to episode, I don't know what episode it was, probably 17 or 22, where I talk about buying an investment property, and based on firsthand experience, I highly suggest people to use reputable, recommended professionals to handle their property management. Mm-hmm. Not everyone wants to do that. They want to save that 9%. They want to maximize their cash flow, et cetera.
Is that what it is? That's what it averages? 9%?
Yeah, typically you're going to pay 75% of 1 month's rent to have the home marketed, and then put a full-time tenant in it, plus anywhere between 7 to 10% of the gross monthly income. So if I rent my property for $1,500, I'm not seeing $1,500. I'm seeing $1,350, because the leasing company is going to take 10% off the top. Mm-hmm. So my thought was if you had your own rental property and you were executing a lease, right? In this scenario, you are the landlord, mm-hmm. knowing what you know about the law, at least the Florida law. What are a couple like gotcha moments that you don't want to get got?
Right. That's the first one. Honestly, there aren't that many gotcha moments. I think the number one thing is really have just great communication with your tenants, right? And also do your research on them, right? If you have to do a background check, that's great. Definitely check their resources, did they say they're employed? Yeah, make a few calls, see if they actually are, and verify their income. Yeah. And if they give you a few references, just do your research, and then make sure you have great communication.
What if they don't pay me? Oh, wait, ready?
Well, that's number 2.
I cut you off, because why do I need to have great communication? And should I document my communication?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
I mean, you should document it, but the reason I'm saying that is because you don't want to end up in litigation. It really isn't the most useful way to settle disputes, right?
Yeah, it's costly.
And then the other one thing is, if you're a landlord, really understand that these are tenants' homes. They live there. They want to make it their home. They are going to treat it as nice as you treat them, right? They might trash the place if you were just rude to them. Mm-hmm. If honestly, I shouldn't say like just because you're rude, but that could be the determining factor if things go enough south, right? And that's the main fear the landlord has. That's why you want a security deposit. But if you have great communication, then you're going to be able to avoid a lot of these issues. The other one is, if there is an issue as far as like the AC breaks, which I want to talk about, appliances, things like that in the house, that you are responsive, and depending on how your lease is written, you do want to fix those things as promptly as possible for tenants, because that's the biggest complaint that tenants have, right?
I'm glad you want to talk about that, because like the 2 questions that I get on my end a lot are, I hear, well, why should I buy versus rent? And I tell them, like, look, when something breaks, it's on you to fix. Mm-hmm. That's your money. That's your savings account. That's your credit card. That's your trip to Home Depot, etc. That being said, when something breaks and you own, it gets fixed right away, or at least on your timeline, because you're the one in charge. Mm-hmm. When you rent, I've heard horror stories of it being weeks, and I lived in my home with no AC. It's been weeks, and I've had my groceries in a cooler. So you just brought it up, and I'm like, oh yes, let's dive into that, because I want to hear what are my requirements as a landlord. How quickly do I need to fix stuff like that? What should I deem as reasonable if I'm the tenant and my AC breaks? Which, by the way, living in states like Arizona and Florida, if your AC breaks, it's like living in the Northeast and your heat goes out in February. And then also, if I'm a landlord and my tenant's not paying, like, what does that process look like? And then let's flip it. I mean, we're living during a worldwide pandemic. There are people who, to no fault of their own, just don't have the ability to make their rent payment. And what type of protections do I have there if I'm one of those people and I'm facing eviction? So that's a lot I threw on your plate. Let's start, and we'll just kind of chip away at it as quick as we can on the AC type refrigerator appliance example.
Sure. And you made me think of something I learned in law school, which is you don't ask compound questions. You know what a compound question is?
Well, I know what a compound sentence is. So I'm guessing a compound question is where I've asked 4 questions.
Yeah, because then I can pick which one I want to answer. Is basically that's why you don't ask compound questions. But it's fine.
I love that. Was that year 2 or year 3?
I think it was year 3.
Because I'm a amateur wordsmith, and when I teach writing for business, I actually teach people to write as if they're communicating to a 6 or 7-year-old. I want short sentences. I want lots of punctuation. And I don't want large vocabulary, because I want it to be a paint by numbers. I want you to be able to read what I'm writing and it just go bump, ba bump, ba bump, ba bump. And then now I just learned as an attorney I would suck because I just asked you 4 questions in one breath of air.
Well, this is a conversation. That's fine. It made me think of.
Yeah.
But I'm going to answer all of them.
Okay.
So let's just break it down like this. The 3 main. You said like the big no-nos, or let's just say the biggest disputes. But like I said, the security deposit when someone moves out.
Yep.
Issues with things breaking, and then finally non-payment of rent, which is what it's called under Florida law, right? And that would be the eviction process. So the second one is issues with the AC, other things in the house breaking, the refrigerator's down, things like that. Florida law, so it doesn't cover ACs. Okay, they're not it's not required under Florida law for a landlord to provide working AC.
Which, little FYI, when you're financing a home, homes do not have to have AC; they have to have heat.
Right, which is interesting because.
Because have you tried to live those 3 days with no power when a hurricane comes through? Because they're not fun.
Which is, I mean, the reason Florida really grew. Or one of the main reasons, I mean, there's
the advent of AC.
Yeah. So it's just not, and I was researching this recently. Like you were asking, nationally, how's it work? I think Texas, you do have to have it, but don't quote me on that. I think, because I was curious what states have it, because I thought about it, like maybe if I went through and just was like, okay, my firm's gonna take a case, we're going to bring it and appeal it all the way up to the Supreme Court and be like, this is ridiculous. AC it should be it should be a requirement, because it's not right now. So irrespective of AC, but let's say like the fridge breaks, that one is something, right? That, okay, the landlord doesn't fix it. Well, as a tenant, what are your rights? What can you do, right? Because you might be in the situation.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm asking you.
Okay. Well, again, this is where great communication works. The Florida law says, you have to provide a certain letter. It's called a 7-day notice to the landlord to fix the issues. And if they don't, then you can withhold rent and or move out. So that 7-day notice, though, as a tenant, you have to send it then before, let's say you're moving, it's the middle of the month, you're coming up towards the end of the month, 7 days before the end of the month, because then your rent's going to have to be due. Let's say right now we're in November. So let's say, but you didn't want to have to worry about December rent because this is such an issue. Starting now, send the 7-day letter now. Try to get it fixed in this month because, you need to send it by certified mail.
And that's assuming I emailed, called, and texted, and I'm getting no response, or I'm getting a big double middle finger.
Well, that's the interesting thing about now we're in a bigger, we're having a broader, I have a broader analysis for you on that. It's great that you have these apps. Like I know a lot of landlords that use these things, Appfolio or what, I can name 10 different apps. That's great to communicate on, but Florida law doesn't necessarily acknowledge that that's the proper way.
It was written before the iPhone.
It was written before the iPhone.
Yeah.
It's a legacy system, so it hasn't been updated to. Yeah, is an email sufficient? Is through the app sufficient to send that kind of notice? It's and here's the thing: these are all state cases. They don't necessarily get appealed. So unless you're really reading the state cases, you're not necessarily gonna.
We need Rich Workman back in the in the state house.
Right.
Rich was awesome. He was from the Brevard County, Melbourne district, and he once tried to have a law written that I want to say prohibited midget tossing. I don't even know if that's like politically correct to like use that term, little people tossing, but it's because somewhere it was written that it was like banned. He was always looking out for getting rid of the laws that just make no sense. Like, why is this in here? Why is this written that way? We almost need someone like him to come in and say, hey, guys, by the way, it's like 2020 and maybe letters are a thing of like decades ago, and maybe we should like include email communication, maybe one day communication via apps or text messaging, but at least email.
You would think so,
but
right.
but not yet. So that's good to know.
I might not sound like an ignoramus, but Rich, what's
Workman? Yeah,
Workman?
he's no longer. He was in either the Florida House or the Florida Senate.
Was this a while ago? Because I moved here in 2010, so I.
No, so he was probably like 2008 through about 2016, and I think he actually termed out. So I don't know if he was in the Florida House and he termed out, and he ran for the Florida Senate and he lost his Florida Senate seat. But because the state of Florida actually has this thing called term limits. Which would be
everywhere.
really cool if the federal government would follow what the state of Florida does. But I think in the Florida House and Florida Senate, you're 6 years in one and 8 years in the other. So you can only make a career out of being in the legislature for 14 total years. Oh, you can do like 6 years in one and then 8 in the other. And I could be wrong on my numbers, by the way, guys. Like I haven't brushed up on my Florida civics.
You should just put it in the. You should have DC put like.
Yeah, but
like
no, that's
right here. Now I'm giving him a lot of work.
So let's talk about evictions. Let's talk about
that's number 3.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And it's a very timely issue because here we are. What's today? November 10th?
Something.
Yeah.
JC says we can't timestamp these.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's November 2020. We'll just say.
Yeah. There we go.
It's after the election. So
there we go.
We'll place it at some point.
It could be a day between Sunday and Tuesday.
Yeah.
After the election.
Very cryptic.
Yeah, okay.
Evictions, not a fun process, right? Not
on either side.
Topic.
Like out of curiosity, have you ever met a landlord that was like, hell yeah, I get to evict this person today?
Very few, and frankly, I don't know if I'd represent them. I do lean towards wanting to represent tenants because again, I think they're abused more often, and it's a landlord friendly state as far as how the laws are written, in my opinion. But I have. So back to when I was really practicing on my own, starting out, I had an eviction in 2017 in Miami-Dade, and it's like August or September. We're going through the process, and Hurricane Irma pops up on the map. At that point, Cat 3 for.
Now you get some FEMA laws, some federal disaster laws.
So actually, it's very county specific.
Okay.
First of all, about notices and things like that. And I think during that hurricane season, there was an elderly woman who was late on her rent and like kicked out days before this storm. And then now like it was such an uproar in Miami, they changed. They have like a local ordinance about it. But essentially,
Dorothy's Law.
Yeah, could be Dorothy's Law, right? And so it's you always have to look at what the county level is first. But statewide, the way it works, typically non-COVID times, and I'll get into the COVID changes. Let's say a tenant is late on rent. You can send them a 3-day notice. Okay, this is a notice that tells them you're behind X amount. It has to be exact, and then you say you have 3 days to provide that amount or give us the keys and get out. And so if you've gotten this letter, first of all, it's very jarring for tenants, obviously, but if they don't pay by that 3rd day, and this is again where the calendaring matters, right? So you count. So let's say I posted it today, then the first day is the next day. So let's say it's today. Let's say today was a Monday.
Okay.
We won't say. Today, hypothetically, is a Monday. So then you would count 3 days: Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. If the tenant hasn't paid by Thursday, you can file on Friday, right?
Okay.
But let's say it was a Wednesday that you posted it, then you'd have Thursday, Friday, Monday to pay, and then Tuesday to file.
And by posted, it means so I have to send them a letter. Once they're
There's many
30
ways.
once they're 30 days late, I send them a letter, and the letter says you have 3 days to pay me.
No. Okay, that's the 30-day notice. That's something else, again, because of COVID, which I'll get into.
Okay.
This is just standard how it
okay.
works. Yeah, 3 days. They can just be late per the lease. They can be a couple days late.
Yep. So rent was due on January 1st. It's now February 1st.
Or it's just January 7th.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's the middle of the month. You haven't been paid yet as the landlord. You want to put that notice up because you also want them to know.
Yeah.
You need to let them know and protect your interests, right? As the
Whoa,
landlord.
wait a minute. So it's due. So it's not like in the mortgage industry, if your mortgage payment is due January 1st, we don't even report you being late until you haven't paid us by February. Mm-hmm. Meaning you're due January 1st. We give you the 15th just free grace. Like you guys pay the 15th. Cool, thanks. It's not until the 30th, or I'm sorry, the 1st of the next month that we're now telling Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion, hey, you need to ding this person. I have a 30-day late. Mm-hmm. And I don't think we can even start the eviction process until the foreclosure process until you're 3 months behind in most states. But you're saying rent was due on January 1st. It's now January 3rd, 7th. What? And I'm sending you a notice saying you have X amount of time to pay me, or else.
It's called a 3-day notice.
3-day
so
notice,
you have
wow.
3 days to pay, and then let's say again after all the math.
3 days from when I received the letter.
Yeah, and this one there's a few ways.
Is there a presumptive it's presumed that if it was mailed on Monday, that I receive it by Thursday, or
no? Well, so there's a few ways you can do
Okay.
it. You can do certified mail. You can post it, and there might be a third way that I'm not sure.
When you say post it, like post in the
post
newspaper?
on the door.
Oh, on the door.
On their actual front door.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then you sign it. You keep a copy as the landlord, and that has to be in the lawsuit, the eviction lawsuit.
Okay.
Okay. So an eviction lawsuit, there's two parts. First off, a typical law, this is getting to like litigation as far as what's called civil procedure, but essentially, the whole statute 83, the chapter 83 of the Florida statutes, is an expedited process, which means that the normal, like if I was to sue you, because let's say you threw that at me,
okay,
I'm going to sue you that you damaged, or I say I break one of this device, and you're going to sue me. I have 20 days to respond since I was served.
These are called our COVID spit catchers, by the way. That's an actual technical term, but go ahead.
Oh, okay. And so 20 days to respond, and it's a normal. It's dragged out. It does take a long time, but that's the general idea. Now, for possession of the property under the statute of 83, it's 5 days. So, tenant hasn't paid. It's a Monday, all the way to Thursday, the third day, hasn't paid still. Friday, landlord can then file. Then from that day, you start counting 5 days, but you start on the next business day, which would be Monday.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a lot. So basically, Monday till Friday the following week, that's when if you sued on that Friday, you have to serve the defendant. The tenants, they have to be noticed. Once they've been noticed, it's 5 days.
And after 5 days, if they haven't paid, then the sheriff's going to come,
right,
and
exactly.
Stuff's going to be moved out, etc.
Well, yeah. Like on that 5th day, if the tenant hasn't paid, then the landlord can get what's called a writ of possession. That's the paper that the sheriff, gives the sheriff the permission to go into the house and forcibly, knock down the door and then take everyone's possessions and move them out of the house, which is a scary process.
That's
yeah. It's sad. It happens all the time around the United States.
That's terrible. You
would can imagine, right?
Yeah, you would hope you could find ways to avoid that at all costs.
Right, and so you can imagine this is one of my first cases back to Hurricane Irma. My client was the landlord in the situation, and the tenants. It was a family that was, the storm was chasing. And I have another story that could be its own podcast about how I left with last minute from Miami Beach. I was evacuated. I drove all the way with my friend's soon-to-be in-laws at the time he was engaged to New Orleans, of all places that you never know could have veered and hit us there too. But that's a whole other story. But
that's because you went to C.A.R.E.S and you hit it big, rolling dice. And
I didn't play that. I was big into poker at the time, but not. I don't know if I was at that point in 2017. Again, another story. So I have a lot of stories. We're in the middle of this lawsuit, and my landlord's like, "Oh man, this family."
Why weren't they?
They were late many months. So at this point, he had worked with them.
He had worked with them.
Yeah, a lot of landlords. Yeah, that's the right thing to do. Hey, you're late. Let's. What can we do? And then, and there's a lot of programs right now. We'll get into the COVID stuff, but this story is interesting because, let's say again, there's the 5 days, and hurricane was coming. The sheriffs aren't going to execute writs. So they're just going to say, we're not going to.
Yeah, not to after
the judge can give me the writ, but I'm the sheriff. I get to decide.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to go and schedule a time for my officers to go in the middle of the storm and all that. So it ultimately delayed, and the courts were closed and stuff. So the tenant's got a few more weeks. I didn't feel obviously for my client, it's unfortunate because he has a mortgage.
Yeah.
So it's always a hard situation for everybody involved, and it's just not pleasant. But the story in this one is eventually once we had the sheriff goes, and again, I don't know how each county does it. The sheriff posted, "Hey, I'm coming tomorrow at this time. Just FYI, you can get out before then, so we don't have to break the door." And then, So back to the whole picture again. Because the statute says you have this expedited process, you can do that in 5 days. Well, that's great. But if you want to sue the tenant for the past rent, for the money portion, plus your attorney's fees and all that, which a lot of landlords, why would you do that anyway? Because know they can't pay. And
correct.
You're going to be chasing bad money
after
good money.
Unless someone was somehow independently wealthy and vindictive, and they weren't paying you because they're being vindictive.
But that's a separate. It'd be the same case number, but it's a separate 20-day process, and so it actually is. So you would have to. It's almost like dual. I'm getting
So here it is. Because unfortunately, for us, you and I can sit here for 4 or 5, 6 hours, and I mean, my questions are, you may have hot yoga or date night with your girlfriend, but I want to be able to. Obviously, we've educated. Obviously, people's heads are spinning, and I mean, my head's spinning, and I'm thinking, okay, I am a landlord. I once was a tenant. Mm-hmm. I have nieces and nephews.
Right, we all have family members
who are right. If people have questions in the state of Florida, how do they get a hold of you? I'm not done yet because I do want to come back with rapid fire because I want to take full advantage of having an attorney on the show. But right now, as it pertains to being a tenant, being a landlord, disputes, protection, etc., how would someone get a hold of Joe?
Sure. So, and we can put it into the notes as well, right? The URL, so you can go to our website or call us. I'm not looking at the camera. 407-495-1893 is our number, and just call us. We typically will have you go through an intake process. We have intake forms, and then to know what's going on, because we actually have been getting. It is incredible, again, how you fall into areas. So, I mean, I'm getting 3 to 5 inquiries from tenants and a few landlords. I'd probably get 1 to 2 landlords a month, I would say, on average, that call me, or just through my network. But I'd say, I have a huge inbound for tenants right now because it is a very pressing issue for a lot of them. And so, if we have time, I can be quick about the CDC moratorium, which is very timely.
Let's touch on that because. Okay. But when you were talking, I'm like, some people might be at a point where they're like,
this is too much.
No, not even too much. I have questions. I wish this was like a live show and I could call in and ask Joe these questions, but we don't. Sorry, guys.
Do another one.
We can always do more, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're local. I'm local.
Yeah.
I love it, and we can do them in person. But let's talk about, because we are in the midst of a pandemic. But today it was announced that Pfizer.
Right. Great news.
Great news.
You just gave away what date is though.
Come on, it's between Sunday and Tuesday, the day after the election. I mean, the elections are done on Tuesday, and we know we're still in November. But so
Giving
it was
clues.
Yes, it was announced today that it looks very promising that there's a vaccine. that's doing well in their initial test run. But no, there's some people right now that are like, hey, I just need to know because I have some questions. So that's why I wanted to get that out. But we are in the midst of this pandemic, and there are some bonus, you'd call them, bonus protections for tenants. Can you talk briefly on that?
Sure. There's two parts. One is the CDC moratorium, okay, which
Centers for Disease Control.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this made major headlines, and I'm sure I don't know if you saw this in the news about the moratorium, but it basically says, due to the risk of, again, we talked about it. I mean, it's horrific if a family is thrown out, and we can talk about all the ramifications of, how hard it is if a family loses their home, right? But for a health perspective of being in a pandemic, you can imagine if all of a sudden a family of four or even one or two have to go shack up with another family, and you have close quarters, and then the virus can spread in those new houses or in communities where the homeless would go to, right?
Okay.
So the CDC said we need to prevent this from happening because if evictions, they called it the wave, the great wave, like this wave that was supposedly coming, everyone's going to be out into these situations where the virus will thrive.
Okay.
So that's why. So what it does is it says it's a specific affidavit that a tenant has to sign. So if they were provided with the notices and all that, and they were sued, they'd have this affidavit, and it says, and there's like 5 things on it, and I don't know if you want to put in the link or because I can send it to you. But
You're looking at me like I know how to use a computer.
Okay.
You should look over there where JC is, and he
okay.
Yes.
But basically, and I just don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah.
I'll tell you there's a few main ones. One is that you're signing it under oath, right? That and I think you might have to have it notarized, but it says, I've made attempts to pay what I could. I've lost my job or had reduced hours because of COVID, which I mean that's not very hard to prove. And then the last one, one of the main ones, is that if you were to be evicted, you would be forced into a situation, which I think anyone who has been evicted, like where they have nowhere to go and they're in a community that it could spread it.
Yeah.
And there's a few other ones as well. There's I think it's like 6 or 7 statements that you have to check off. I think you need to initial each one too. So tenants need to at least be making some payments, and so that's the CDC moratorium. The other one is the C.A.R.E.S. Act. We all know about the C.A.R.E.S. Act.
And that moratorium says that if I sign this affidavit, I have it notarized, and whatever the law requires that states those 3 things, I can't be evicted for how long? 30 days, 60 days, 90 days?
Yeah. Good follow-up
6
question,
months?
because I realized I didn't finish the whole thought. If that happens, the CDC moratorium says, so once you file that affidavit, that the case stops all the way into the end of the year.
Okay.
Now things might change, right? The CDC might extend it. They might say we're going to do another 2 months. Like at this point, we don't know. So that's something I would just Google, right? If you are in that situation, look that up.
Okay.
Yeah. Now the other one is the C.A.R.E.S. Act, okay, which actually has a lot of implications because number one, if you're a landlord and you have a federally backed mortgage, and in that property that you have that mortgage on, you have tenants, then you have to provide more than the 3-day, you have to provide a 30-day notice.
Okay.
Okay. And that's until the end of the year as well. So that 30 days, so you can be 5 days late, but they have 30 days to come up. And then, so that's like Freddie Mac, all those.
Yep. Yeah. If you have a loan that's backed by Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, Department of Veteran Affairs, HUD, which is if you have an FHA home, like maybe you bought this house for yourself to live in 10 years ago. When you upgraded, you kept the house, you kept the mortgage, and now it's a rental property. Yep.
So back to this is the last point I have on these, which is both of them, right? So back to the CDC, there is one I remembered that they have to check off as a tenant. It's that you've gone after every like local or governmental or federal governmental program to get assistance. So you've tried to do that. And so Orange County, because that's where we are, they received and they set up a fund from the federal government. It's from the C.A.R.E.S. Act. I think it's like $50 million, like a lot of money that goes to tenants and landlords in this situation. So if you're a landlord and you're having an issue with your tenant, point them towards that. Have them apply or research it.
That is huge. So that is huge because I think so few people
don't know about
actually know about that.
Right.
So I mean, landlords themselves. Because if I'm a landlord, especially if I'm a landlord of multiple units, or in that world they call them doors, by the way. If I'm a landlord, I have 17 doors or 1,700 doors.
Right. In hotels, they call it keys.
Right? Okay.
So.
Yeah. So how great would it be that I could say, hey, look, I understand you can't pay. There are resources out there, because as a landlord, I still want to get paid, because I still have to pay. I may have financed that investment some way.
Yeah.
So that's great information for anyone listening. If you're having a difficult time making your rent payment, or you know someone who is, check with your local housing authority. Your local housing authority, whether it's Seminole County Housing Authority, the Orange County Housing Authority, the DeKalb Housing Authority, the Cobb County. I mean, whatever county you live in, look to your housing authority. And if it's not through them, I promise you, they will know who it's through.
Right. And I think this applies to everyone. I think it's a theme of your podcast is about entrepreneurs, right? I just jumbled that word, but basically we're in crazy times, and anyone can attest to that, right?
Yep.
You have to be thrifty. You have to be crafty. So you should be researching these things. You really need to be aggressive in finding these programs.
Have you seen how your friends interact on social media? Very little research is done. Very little.
Yeah.
You're asking people to research. No, very little. But that's what this show is. Honestly, it's everything you should have learned in high school, but you didn't. These are conversations that, for whatever reason, when my buddies and I go hunting next month, we don't talk about this. Right? When my wife gets together with the ladies in the neighborhood and they play canasta, they don't talk about this. And I don't know why. Like, people like to keep everything so surface level. I'm like, but we can't learn and get better if we do that. I mean,
I don't know. Who are you hanging around with then?
Ooh, well, maybe.
Threw back at you.
Do you like to hunt? We're going quail hunting next month.
Okay.
Yeah, I've never hunted a deer.
You guys heard it, so follow up and see if he invited me. After we cut.
You know what? You made the alternate list, because the cabin only sleeps 8, and we already have 8 people committed. But we are living in the world of Rona. You never know. One of the guys can catch Rona. I'll give you a buzz.
Okay. No, but I love being outdoors. I used to I've never hunted. I am a meat eater. I try to. I call myself. Me and my girlfriend say we're plant based. That's our.
Yeah.
No, try to be as clean as possible.
Yeah, one of my favorite books that I read this year was In Defense of Food, and
who's that author?
Jamie Oliver. Jamie Oliver. It's fantastic, and I'm a butcher this, but one of the under themes of the book is it's like eat something, mostly plants, is kind of the. It's like
Michael Pollan, right?
There you go. I say Jamie Oliver. Jamie Oliver does cookbooks. Michael Pollan.
Okay.
It's Michael Pollan's book.
He also did one on psychedelics. Have you heard about that book that he wrote?
No, but yeah, mushrooms. Let's go.
Well, the
I've never done mushrooms, by the way, but
psilocybin is the scientific term.
Is what?
Psilocybin.
Okay.
Yeah.
No.
So he does a book on that. Right. I think his quote that you're talking about is,
eat something, mostly plants, like when you're hungry. It's like basically
eat often, mostly plants.
Yeah.
It's like simple. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like the first sentence of his book.
Yeah. It's like it's real easy to be healthy if you just do these 3 things. I shared this with my mom yesterday. When you go grocery shopping, you shop the outside perimeter of the grocery store, because why? That's where the fresh food is. Whether it's meats, fruits, starches, vegetables, they're all on the outer perimeter. And I don't know about you, but like, have you ever read the ingredients of an apple? Have you ever looked at the ingredients of spinach?
I have not.
Yeah, because they're not on there, right? And then that's kind of the point of his book. Just like a chicken breast, just like a fillet of fish, not the filet-o-fish. That's at McDonald's, and that's pumped full of chemicals and preservatives. But if you go to the seafood section, it's like that's his book, and it's like, yeah, when you're hungry, you eat. You just eat that stuff. You eat natural food. So like that was rule 1. Rule 2 was if it has more than 5 ingredients, you don't eat it. If it comes in plastic packaging, you don't eat it. And if you can't pronounce it, you sure as hell don't eat it, meaning you can't pronounce the ingredients. But like this whole calorie counting, and it's like it's for the birds. Like it's this whole gluten-free this and fat-free that is like you're supposed to have fat in your diet. It's but I don't know how we got on the topic of first I said Jamie Oliver. Jamie Oliver, he actually does really good cookbooks that teach you how to make meals that are basically Michael Pollan approved. And I think that's how I got the two confused. Okay, we're going to do rapid fire. Rapid fire with an attorney. All right, so imagine you and I are on this hunting trip. We're just two guys, two friends hanging out.
Well, first off, which I should probably have given at the beginning, like disclaimer that anything I give is not legal advice. It's just general information. So whatever I say here, please also fact check me as well.
Yeah, but no, that is a great disclaimer.
Yeah.
And like anything I ever say has to be triple fact check because I just pull something out of my butt. No, we talked about this. People who tune in are going to want to know, hey Joe, I got pulled over. Do I blow or do I don't blow?
Ooh, that's great. Because actually, that's a good question because that's a plug. Because we also, I'd say about half of our practice is criminal defense. Because my law partner was a prosecutor.
Is DUI criminal? I thought it was just like a.
No, that's criminal.
That's criminal.
For sure.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
I said that jokingly, guys. By the way, yes.
And
honestly, yes, I do. But in the world of Uber and Lyft, the fact that you got a DUI, we should almost like brand you with like a Scarlet AA. Because come on. But anyhow.
And I'm probably going to, we'll see if I do this correctly when Parker listens to this. But basically, when you get a Florida license, you're giving them permission to breathalyze you. Okay? So if you decline to take a breathalyzer test when you're pulled over, then you have an automatic suspension on your license. Okay? So then I believe it's a year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Now, and I might be getting that wrong. One's 6 months, one's a year. Now, let's say that you blew above a 0.08.
Yep.
Then you're going to have a suspension as well, right? I think of 6 months.
Okay.
I might be mixing up the suspension. So if you've been having a few drinks and you believe that it's going to be above 0.08 and you do blow, then I'll tell you one thing. You come to our office, we have very few options for you, right? We're going to have to really dig deep to come up with an idea of like what happened with the machine. And I mean, we'll figure out defenses. And again, this is all a
this is a disclaimer. And something that I learned from you off record. We were talking last week that like if you ever do get a DUI, you want to go to an attorney who actually specializes in this because there's actual like continuing education courses. That you were saying like, look, like you haven't done them, so your partner has.
Right.
So your partner would be the one who took that case because you want someone with his background that's gone through those extra courses in order to really understand how to properly litigate DUI defense.
Yeah, and he's gone to these seminars where you're with a breathalyzer and you have shots and you're taking them and then testing to see. So
how do I get that job?
The one that trained? Yeah.
They put me up in a hotel room and I sit there and take shots and I blow. That'd be fun.
But from an evidentiary standpoint, right, you can imagine if you were a defense attorney, you would want a situation where somebody who is on camera maybe looks a little bit, was wobbly, but didn't necessarily speak even and just didn't blow. Because then there's no drawn evidence of the
it becomes more of a he said, she said judgment call versus the machine said X and the machine's only wrong this much time. Okay, good to know.
That's why I know it's rapid fire, but you're asking I don't know if this is the best thing for a lawyer because we give long answers.
Well, and honestly, I was looking for you just to say, hey, look, full disclosure, you shouldn't let me answer that. You should reach out to someone who
That's
is
the better answer.
Yep.
Reach out to our firm and get a consultation with my law partner.
I mean it's good to. I didn't know that. Like I just thought, I call my attorney. Which speaking of call my attorney, this is part of the rapid fire. At what point in your life should you have an attorney? Like I hear people say, "Oh, well, my attorney. I'm going to call my attorney," and I don't know anyone who has like an attorney.
Do you have one? Do you
no.
have okay.
No, I don't have an attorney.
Have you ever used one before?
I've had a dispute with an employer over a decade ago.
Let's get into it.
And I had to defend myself, so that forced me to hire an attorney. But no, like I've never had to sit down and thank God and do criminal defense or divorce situation or foreclosure situation or bankruptcy situation. I've definitely referred attorneys who specialize in bankruptcy. I know there's attorneys who specialize in accounting or tax I guess it would be audits or disputes. But no, like at what point does someone like need an attorney?
The answer is you might not ever need one in your life, frankly. But they're good to have, like you were saying on our call last week. Knowing a mortgage broker. By the way, is there a difference between mortgage broker and banker?
Yeah, I'll get my panties in a wad if you call me a mortgage broker.
Okay.
Mortgage banker, loan officer. If you say loan officer, that covers the entire industry, right. Whether you're a broker or a banker, you're an inside, outside, call center, or if you just say loan officer, it's like the most PC term.
So we'll use loan officer. Just like any nowadays, I mean, it's funny you use the word Rolodex, which I never actually seen one, but I know that's like it's a legacy of this terminology.
The movie Wall Street. Right. They have them in the movie.
Great movie. Yeah. Great movie. Yeah. Alec Baldwin. ABC. Yeah. Always be
closing.
And it's great to have them because they're gonna be very knowledgeable in your network. Obviously, I mean, do you want to have to pay an hourly just a rate to an attorney just for a random opinion, but you might want them as friends, right? But I'm biased, I have a lot of lawyer friends.
I like that. No, yeah.
But there's a famous quote that anyone that represents themselves has a fool for a client, right? So even if I'm in a situation, and I've represented other lawyers in situations in landlord tenant actually recently where they don't know that area, and so you end up in. We live in a very hyper specialized, complex society, right? I mean, if you just look around, it blows your mind, right? I mean, I've got my iPhone here and attached to my watch, and we've got all these gadgets. Who are you going to call? Now I can't put it away.
Ghostbusters.
Who you're going to call if this breaks? You're going to call an IT person, right?
Yeah.
Or if you have a plumbing issue, you're going to call a plumber, right? So same idea. Like if you have an issue, or you're ever pulled over, you should be able to call. We have a 24-hour service that calls after hours, and then will forward to us on our phones.
So there you go. That's
right. So on criminal matters. And I know enough to be dangerous as well, and I've done probably about a quarter of our criminal cases, but the more serious ones, Parker does those.
So that's probably a great takeaway. Is that maybe we don't need an attorney on staff because we're not billionaires. We don't need an attorney on retainer, but why don't we have an attorney we either golf with, boat with, fish with, hunt with, coach their son or daughter in whatever sport that my son or daughter plays? Can you imagine going out like for your travel lacrosse team, and I'm like, I really need that position, but your dad or mom's not an attorney, so I'm searching for someone who is. Maybe not to that extreme, but like let's all make friends with an attorney. Let's all go find someone who practices law for a living. And make sure we're friends with them, because I believe in what you just said, which is when you need an expert, you call an expert. I would much rather work overtime doing what I do well so I can pay for and hire someone to do what they do well. Very rarely have I seen it where do-it-yourself has turned out better. I haven't seen do-it-yourself real estate turn out well, do-it-yourself mortgage, do-it-yourself law. Yeah, do people get lucky? Sure, right? But in the big scheme of things, no. The favor is always going to slant towards the pro. Because DUI is a big one, bankruptcy is a big one, divorce is a huge one. I mean, almost 50% of every marriage ends in divorce. At what point, when you get married, should you start planning on your divorce? That's probably a whole separate topic, right? Because you and I talk about this offline, kind of joking, but like, would you get into a car if you knew that there's a 50% chance that you were going to get into it?
I wasn't joking. I was not.
Yeah, no, but no, that was a question you posed to me, but people do. People get into a car every single day knowing that there's a chance, a small one, that they're going to get into an accident. And for the most part, they're insured. Now, they're insured in Florida because the Florida statute mandates that you have car insurance if you're going to own a car and drive it. But yet we get married every day, not individually, but people get married every single day, usually on Fridays and Saturdays. But little do they plan for divorce, even though statistically half of those marriages are going to end in divorce. At what point do I need to get an attorney involved in my marriage?
Great question. Well, I'll say one of the more beautiful things that I see when I go in the courthouse now, I honestly, I don't remember the last time I've been because everything's online through Zoom and various online measures, but you always see a couple dressed up, and the bride is in a dress and they're signing their paperwork, right? So it's
and
a
do you
beautiful
yell,
thing.
"Sucker"?
No.
Do you go give your business
if
card? Hey.
If I was a sleazy lawyer, I would give him my card, right? And just slip it into the one of their
And full disclosure,
but,
marriage is a beautiful thing. It's a lot of freaking work, but it is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I've been the best man twice, and I mean, hey, the events are fun, absolutely, and there's fewer things that Americans love more than getting married, and
Super Bowl.
They love Super Bowl, but some people probably get married during Super Bowl. I don't know. That might be
That's
thing.
blasphemous. I mean,
can you imagine? Oh, definitely not in certain states, right, in certain regions. But that wouldn't be a thing.
Yeah.
You're talking to someone that doesn't really follow football too much.
Yeah, I know.
So what I was going to say though is actually if you are interested in somebody I highly recommend you check out. Oh, now I'm drawing a blank on her name.
Well, how about this?
She's an author that talks, and she's a therapist that talks about these issues, right?
Which
I recommend to clients because we do divorce work as well.
So, okay. Yeah. Good to know for the audience listening in, especially those in the greater Central Florida area. Last question. Where should someone go to find an attorney? Okay. Right? Because most of us, we don't have a go-to. Like, right. I don't have a go-to attorney. Maybe I do now, but
okay.
Where do I go? My neighbor?
So number one is, okay, like many professions, you want to find someone that a referral is always very, very timely, right? Mm-hmm. It's great to have somebody reference you. And a lot of times you'll call a lawyer, your local lawyer that you do know, let's say you do know one in your family, they're going to reference you to somebody that does that practice area. Yeah. I do it all the time. People call me, say, look, bankruptcy, I just, I know enough to be dangerous, but you don't want me handling your bankruptcy. Yeah. And I'll just, could I be proficient in it? And can I legally take your case? Yeah. Yes. But would I? Not necessarily. Now, if you don't know any lawyers, right, which that happens, you should go to your local bar association. So just go to, for example, Seminole Bar Association, Orange County Bar Association, or start at the Florida Bar.
Okay.
Or whatever state you're in, the Arizona Bar. And they have hotlines. You call those and you say, hey, I'm looking for a lawyer that does X, Y, and Z. And there are lawyers that sign up for those lists. And to get on this list is not that easy. I mean, it's not the hardest thing, but that means you're starting at a spot that they've been vetted by the bar as far as being on these lists.
Is every practicing attorney a member of the bar?
Every legally practicing attorney, right? Anyone because there is the unauthorized practice of law. So some people... Yeah. Still happens somehow. I don't know. There are people that try to practice and don't.
I'm going to be in Nashville in a couple weeks, and up there they have the Honky Tonk Bar Association. A little bit before your time, that was Garth Brooks.
Oh, okay.
Had a song called the Honky Tonk Bar Association. So anytime someone talks about the bar association,
it went right over my head.
And you were like,
I should have just nodded and laughed.
Just chuck a little bit.
Yeah.
Joe, thank you so much for your time. Again, if you want to get a hold of Joe Sternberg, Joe, how does someone reach you because they need legal help?
Definitely.
Or they want to do hot yoga.
If you're local, call us at 407-495-1893 or go to our website, which will be in the.
Well, why don't you give it out
long.
though?
It's landersandsternberg.com. So it's very
Landers and Sternberg.com. It's BERG.
Put that in the. Okay.
Perfect. Hey, I'm Dio. He's Joe. Thank you for tuning in. This is all the time we have for this episode. If you have any questions, drop them in the comment bar. Email me. Email Joe. I'll put you in contact with Joe, and he will do his best to answer your questions. And then more importantly, refer you to a subject matter expert if it's something that he doesn't handle. But Joe, I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to get in here on a Monday. Find us on Instagram, The Loan Officer Podcast, Facebook, The Loan Officer Podcast. If you're tuning in via YouTube, please know that you can check us out on Spotify, on Apple, iTunes, just about anywhere you can listen to podcasts. We're there. And if you're listening to us, please know you can watch us on YouTube. We'd love to see you see us. Share us, like us, comment, give us some feedback, and more importantly, tune into next episode. That's all the time we have for this episode. He's Joe, I'm Dio, and peace.